Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal Podcast. Our guest today is Farah Farid Kazani. Farah is a director of PR at Rosarium Collective, leading the talent management and media strategy while helping founders and executives grow visibility, authority, and strategic influence. Farah, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Before we get started, do you want to give a quick intro about yourself and your business to our audience?
Of course. So I'm Farah and I was born in India. I lived there predominantly most of my life. And then I moved to UK for a bit to pursue my undergrad and COVID happened. So, the world was kind of struggling to figure out what they wanted to do. So I went back to India. And when I was back in India, I started my own business. And I ran that for a little over a year. And then I figured that I kind of believe in the fact that you should complete what you started. And I started my undergrad, but never got to complete it in UK, which is why I kind of moved here to Tampa to finish that. And I did. And currently I work at Rosarium Collective. I started as a brand and media strategist here. And in 11 months, I moved my way up, and now I'm director of PR. And it's one of those feelings that are so rewarding. And the company I work for is a PR and marketing firm. We kind of do personal branding, talent management, marketing, social media, SEO, all of that for our clients. And our clients are executives, founders, entrepreneurs, just in very successful positions. And we just make sure that we kind of give them the credit that they deserve for, who they are and what they built.
Super. Thank you for that introduction. So, without further ado, we can get into. We have three topics, right? We'll start with one and we'll work our way to the other two. You had suggested all of them, and they're each of them is as interesting as the other. So, the first one is from Mumbai to the US, your journey as an entrepreneur building across cultures. So, maybe we can get started there. If you could just get us into the topic, and then we'll transition to the other two. And I'm going to socialize the topics with the audience so people are aware. From sales to public relations, how I transitioned careers and found my true strengths. Last but not least, why I believe in the power of public relations and personal branding in today's world, right? So that's the crux of it. Essentially, we're going to talk about, you said public relations and what it means in the context of you helping founders of other companies and executives, essentially, right? So let's start with your journey. Give us a little bit of an intro to it, but if you could just go into more details, let's start there.
For sure. So, as I said, I was born in India. My father is a very successful businessman. He's worked in finance all his life, and I was like, no, I don't want to get into numbers. Like, this is just not where I belong. So, I was always a creative child. I started my first company actually when I was 12 years old. I started a jewelry based company where I would make handmade jewelry and all handmade crafts, and I would kind of use my dad's help to sell them. And I did that for a very long time and I really enjoyed it. I was like, as a 12-year-old, I had autonomy that I didn't expect I would have. So it was really fun building that. And then as time went by, I went to UK because I wanted to pursue communications and media studies over there. And I was having a great time. UK was a very, very, I guess, eye opening experience in terms of just the independence and in terms of like the difference between how the Indian education system functions versus how the one functions in UK. But COVID happened, and like everybody else, everybody else was kind of in that place where they were just struggling to figure out what to do when the whole world is shut down. So I went back home because I didn't understand the idea of being in another country if the university was shut, everything was shut. So I went back home, and I am the kind of person who doesn't like not doing things. I like to be busy. I like to be occupied. And a lot of food later and a lot of pounds that I gained later, I realized that, I need to do something. So it was like 2 a.m. one morning, and I found this leftover cookie dough that I had like cooked, not cooked, but like made for
Okay.
myself in the morning. And I was like, what can I eat this with? And in India, you get this biscuit called Parle-G biscuit. It is the best biscuit that you can ever eat as a
Okay.
child. And I put it together somehow. I like mixed it up and like I went creative with it. And it was the best thing that I had at 2 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, that is so good that I need to do something with that. So I put my creative mindset to it, put everything together, and I started a company called Behind Jars. And it was a cookie dough bakery situation. And I ran that for a year. That was amazing. I really had a great time doing that. It turned profitable very soon because the investment wasn't that much, but I was able to pay off the investment within a month that I put into it, which was for me was like one of those things where I validated my efforts, which I was very happy about. And I ran that for a year, and then slowly, as the world began to open up, my horizon of opportunities began to open up. And my father always taught me, like, finish what you started, like, don't give up in the middle. And I didn't give up my education, just the world shut down on me. So I wanted to kind of finish that. So I came to the US because I received a merit scholarship. And I got into the honors program at the University of Tampa. So I did that, and yeah, that's I guess how I'm here.
Well, that's good. And congratulations on your promotion. You mentioned that you recently got promoted. So let's talk about a bunch of different things in the next 45 minutes, right? So, first thing I get by talking by way of an introduction for us, you like entrepreneurship, right? You're one of those people who wants to be able to run a business. I'll give you context to why I'm going to ask this, why I'm actually going to ask this question, maybe after you respond.
Mhm.
Why did you choose to have slightly a different path from the norm, which happens to be, go to college, do your 4 years there, graduate, pick up a job, and then sort of go through the circle of life, right?
Mhm.
So what were some things that actually inspired you to do something differently from what most people end up doing? It's surely risky, right? I mean, I can say this as somebody who's been running a business for years. Is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Mhm.
Working for somebody almost feels like a break sometimes. I feel like when things are hard, I might want to pick up a job so I actually find things are a little bit easier. So what were some of the factors that motivated you so other people can learn from it and say, you know what, yep, maybe I should do that too, or maybe it isn't for me, right? So what are some of those things?
I think for starters, it's just the fact that in all honesty, I wasn't a confused child with what I wanted to do, but there were so many things I wanted to do. I wanted to like try everything. And I think the reason I got into starting my own business was because I was like, it was a sole proprietorship, if you want to call that. And I could do everything. I was baking, I was handling accounts, vendor negotiations, pretty much everything was me. And I think that was the biggest blessing in my life, that it was that, because it gave me context and perspective on where I really belong, on what I'm really, really good at. Because there were some things I wasn't good at, like numbers. Oof, no, I could just not make numbers happen. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to maybe not really blend into one aspect of running a business, which is why as you grow, like, you have a team. But I think the major reason was just for me to be able to figure out, what do I really want to do with my life? Like, where do I see myself, and where do I see growth? And maybe the second thing for me was that, as I said, my dad has been a really successful, I guess he's been the managing director, and he's worked his way up the ladders, and he became really successful because of everything, all his hard work. But I have seen that man like sit at like odd hours working, like, just trying to manage so many things. But he didn't own the business, but he was managing a lot. And I was like, I adore that, and I want to do that, but I want to be able to do that within something that I have built, within something that I can call my baby, within something that is mine entirely. Not because I have a problem with kind of sharing the wins or sharing the kind of success, but just so that I can, like, validate to myself, like, hey, this is something you've built, and it gives me the idea, like, be serious about this. This is yours. It is yours to win or yours to lose. So figure it out. So I guess that's how entrepreneurship happened.
Okay. And then currently, the work that you're currently doing, you said it's in the space of public relations, right? So that's, I run a software company. I know a little bit of these other things, but certainly not to the extent that you, I'm sure, do. So can you give us an introduction to the core problems that you're solving for your clients, right? I mean, you can come up with examples of things that you're currently working on or what you expect to be working on. But just to give a high level overview of, hey, here are the types of problems that people have, and that's what they come to you with to help them solve those problems.
Sure. So I realized the power of public relations is more than what people think it is. What people think I guess the ideal way that at least especially in India, people think public relations is damage control. It is not damage control in perpetuity. Where we step in is kind of, we have clients who have built so much, right? We've had a client who's been a painter. We have a licensed psychologist. We have a company that deals with AI. We have a IT company. We have all these entrepreneurs that work with us, and they've built so much. But to put them out there in a perspective that gives them the credibility and validity and visibility for what they deserve, for what they've built, is kind of where we step in, right? So that is the power of PR. For example, my CEO, for example, Alexis, she built her business 6 years back, right? And she built her way up from, from the bottom all the way up. And now when you Google her name, she's verified, she's in so many articles, she's in so many media features, she's in so many podcasts. Like, she's been nominated for awards. And that probably wouldn't have happened if public relations didn't happen, if she didn't put herself out there where she was kind of ready to be inspired, be motivated. So I think the power of that is very, very strong. And I realize that for myself too. Like, now when I look up my name, it says more than it needs to. And it's given me the opportunities that maybe I guess I wouldn't have got if I didn't get into this stream. So,
Okay, that's good. And let's take a few different kinds of companies. You mentioned a bunch of different ones across sectors, right? And we
Mhm.
can take ours as an example as well. Like, we are a product company essentially. How do
Mhm.
you address the need? Does it differ from one sector to another when you deal
Mhm.
with public relations as something that you need to help your clients with? And even within a sector, how does it change from one company to the other? So, what are some factors that make you address the same type of problem differently because the client is different, or maybe because the sector is completely different from the previous one?
I think the major thing that is different is the need of the client, right? Now, there may be someone in an IT company who has a certain X amount of goals. We have maybe someone in a painting company who has X amount of goals. It all boils down to the brand that the owner of that company or a founder or an executive wants to create for themselves. We can only help create that if they are open to creating that. And our idea is that we don't want to speak on behalf of them. We don't want to, I guess, create a narrative for them. Our job is to take their narrative and just make it in a way that is worth putting out there, that seems motivational, that seems like it deserves the credibility it gets. So yes, to answer your question, it depends based on the sector too. Like, an IT, I guess, company is not going to want videos of their house being painted, right? Like, they don't want that. So it definitely depends sector wise, and most importantly, the need of the entrepreneur and the need of what that person wants to get into and wants to build.
Okay, so if we took ours, let's say we took a company like Snowpal, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are a small product company. How
Mm-hmm.
do you go about, what would the initial conversation kind of look like? What would you need to discover about what we do? Because,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our audience is in this space essentially, right? Either they're running a company or building software, working within an organization. So this will be very contextual to our audience essentially, right? So you can
Mm-hmm.
take us as an example, or if you want to take some other software company, that's fine too. Just take a company, and can you speak us through, walk me through how do you break it down? What do you want to, what are some of the initial questions you might ask the clients so you can size them up? And what are some approaches that you might have in mind that you'll start recommending to them? And let's see where that takes us.
So I guess the initial question would be, are we creating a personal brand for you as a person, or are we enhancing your company, right? Because we do personal branding too, which is doing branding for the individual in a company. Then there's branding for the company, right? So you need to narrow that down. You need to figure that out. Are you trying to build you as a person so that you build your brand and then tie your brand into the company, or you're building your
So that's a good point you mentioned, Farah. I did not even know that the first of those two options was even an option.
it is.
I presume. So when does someone want to? I mean, who is a client like that? No, you don't have to name your
Mhm.
client, but I'm just saying in general, who is that person who wants to establish their brand and not the company that they are representing?
So I think the advantage with that is that when you build your personal brand, you become known as a person. When you become known, your brand or your company comes hand in hand with you. You don't have to necessarily work. I mean, there's different aspects to like a company, like sales and all that. Like, we're keeping that aside. We're just talking about visibility and building something from scratch, right? So when you build who you are, you make those connections, you meet those peoples, you speak at conferences. Like, we, most of our clients, like, our goal is to get them to speak at conferences, right? That helps because you introduce yourself, right? You will introduce yourself with your company, you will introduce yourself with what you're affiliated with, correct? So when you do that, it creates curiosity in people's mind, like, hey, I love the input this person has. Who is he? Like, what does he do? Where can we find him? Right? So when they look your name up on LinkedIn, it's going to pop up like, hey, so and so works with so and so. And then you kind of simultaneously build that, you know. So, and that's a really great way for people to understand that, like you said, you didn't think it was an option. That's kind of why we do personal branding, because people don't know it's an option.
But
People,
what role? I mean, is it more for like people in media, like for actors and models, or is it even because I don't see a software engineer do something like that, right? I'm just trying to understand who it's meant for.
no, so I don't think, no, it's definitely not just for actors or something. Like, we do personal branding, like I said. We have clients in tech, we have clients in IT, we also have clients in software. Like, we have a spread of clients. There is no particular targeted industry or any targeted person that needs personal branding. It depends on when you are ready for it. Are you ready to put yourself out on a platform, or are you ready to put yourself out in a way in which you are branded and be affiliated with your company in a way that gives you that visibility in that spectrum, right? So if you choose to do it, it's because you are trying to grow as a person too. Because when your brand grows, your personal brand grows, your opportunities grow. Like, for to give you perspective, to basically really narrow this down for you, our clients, if when they get into personal branding, they tell us our goals. I mean, sorry, their goals. What are they looking for? What do they want to get out of this, right? Most of our clients, like, we get them speaking opportunities, networking opportunities. When I say speaking opportunities, I mean to speak, for example, IT and tech, right? There are so many tech conferences that happened around the world. They happen on a monthly basis, to be very honest. If you speak at that place or you speak at a conference, you're already building your brand, you're already making those connections, you're already getting people to know who you are, right? So it just depends on how you narrow down your goals and if you are ready for it.
Okay, that's very good. Now let me ask you a couple of related questions, which is, so I speak to it as a developer, right? For I've been in the business of building software for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Things constantly change, but the pace of change in the last year or two has been
Mm-hmm.
rapid, as we all know, right? I is here, lock, stock, and barrel. A lot of what white collared folks do, Claude models are able to do it cheaper, quicker. They don't have to take breaks. They don't have to sleep. It works 24/7. So this is a constant question that we find ourselves having to answer, no matter what the role. So I've answered my share of the questions as a developer. I'm going to throw this at you as somebody who's in this space, right? What you're doing is a lot of it is art as well, right? I mean, I'm sure there's a science component to it, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
it is art because you have to figure out what this person wants, how do they want to sell themselves, or how should they actually be presenting themselves, what are the conferences they need to go to, what interactions they might need to have so they get the most bang for their buck, essentially. But a lot of that is also art because you have to figure out based on experience what works, what doesn't. It may have to do with the personality of the person who's engaging with you as well, their company, the product, the sector, and a number of other things. How do you, I mean, does a lot of what you do or some of what you do you ever worry that a bot can actually do that? Or what do you think? We all have to ask ourselves these questions this day and age, right? So what kind of questions crop up in your mind, and what are the answers that you tend to have for those questions that come up from time to time?
I really appreciate you asking this question because as a company, we've genuinely always thought about this. And we actually have a bot that we've named Rosai. She is our internal trained bot and she's amazing. Like, she helps us out with everything we need. And I don't necessarily feel that it needs to be an option. I don't think you need to choose either or. It can be a cumulative effort on both ends, right? I feel from a personal perspective, I feel like the future is going to be AI with human integration. I feel like it's going to be a very balanced approach of, like, you need both to function. Like, we love Rosai. Rosai simplifies life sometimes, and I don't think you need to deny it or be in like denial of the fact that you use AI. If you use AI, you use AI. It's okay, you do you. But I don't think an AI bot is going to be able to accompany one of our clients at a networking event or be able to kind of, I guess, film the content that we get from when our clients are at these stage levels and when they're at these places. Like, I don't think a bot would be able to do that, right? Maybe worst case in the future, a bot might be able to kind of, I guess, edit it in a way, but a bot won't be able to capture that. So I don't think that there needs to be an option, and I don't think we're necessarily worried about the option. I think from the very start, Rosa has been a great integration in our lives. She really helps us, and we talk to Rosa like she's our friend, and she makes life easy. So I don't think it needs to be something that I worry about or that our company worries about or anything. It's just we've learned to, I guess, find a pattern of how our creativity comes in, because each person at our company has a certain skill set which we bring, which I don't think a bot can incorporate. But to simplify things, yes, Rosai is amazing, and to balance that out is, I guess, where we're headed for.
That's actually a very nice answer. And plus, the more interactions you end up having with humans as part of your daily routine at your work, the less risk AI might have, right? Relatively speaking, right? For a developer, 95% of the day is spent just in front of the machine where you almost don't have to have any human interaction. The risk for that role, like my role,
Mhm.
for instance, is a lot higher than someone like you who's actually in the job of interacting with people and trying to make things happen. And there's no template per se, right? That's what I was trying to call out for earlier. Depending on the client, the sector, sure,
Mhm.
you can use a bunch of tools and chat GPT like tools to tell you how you can fine tune what you're doing. But the
Mhm.
need for humans in certain roles seems to be there, at least in the near term, right? So that makes sense. Given that you mentioned that you grew up in Mumbai, right? I don't have very many guests on the podcast that happen to be, there's only a few people I've had from India. So I'm always curious, as somebody who was born and raised in India as well. You are in the space of public relations, right? Again, art one more time. If when you write code in Mumbai versus Chennai, where I come from, or in London, or in New York, or in DC, where I live, in the suburbs, it does not change, right? The syntax is the same.
Mhm.
It's either interpreted or executed on the machine. So things are they don't change by the location. But the type of work you do, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm wondering whether things are going to be dramatically different between Farah doing public relations for companies in Mumbai
Mhm.
versus Farah doing public relations work in London versus in the US, because there's probably a lot of intangible facets to the work that you do which are going to be impacted by the location that you end up working in or with the clients that you're working towards. First of all, is that assumption true, Farah, that there are going to be differences? If so, how significant are those differences? Like, if you were to be transported back to India, to London, and then here, how does your job change? Like, what are some things that stay the same? And what are some things that might be quite different in the way you interact with clients, in the way you go about solving probably the same type of problems?
I think what wouldn't change, let me address that first. What wouldn't change is me as a person. Would offer the same thing that I offer across the different countries, right? Because that's my skill set. That's what I've learned. What could change is probably the types of companies I work with and the sectors of the companies I work with. Like, you would probably agree with me on the fact that when you consider India, it's more tech based. It's more, you have more doctors, you have more engineers. It's just how, like, I guess the sectors in India are. So maybe the companies
I
I
just
work
want to
with.
interrupt there. I don't know if there are more doctors necessarily per capita. I don't know the
Mhm.
numbers, but I have to believe that it's actually a lot lesser than the number of doctors that are in the US per capita. But I guess
Mhm.
if I correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing what you're trying to say is, sorry, if you could just rephrase that, right? I want to make sure I understood that correctly. When you say there are more, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm not generalizing per se. I'm just trying to say that it depends sector wise. I think in India, a lot of people are more, I guess UPSC is a big thing. Getting into government jobs is a big thing, you know. Working at these government related things is a big thing. In the US, I think there is more kind of not the need to work so like I don't like in India, you know how people like spend a lot of their time trying to get into UPSC. They spend 6 years doing that, you know. They spend a lot of time doing that. So for me, I feel like if I was back in India, I would have to really create the need for someone to want public relations, right? Because I feel like in India it's a little bit not, I guess, in demand is the word I want to use, because maybe
Oh, no, I
it.
see. Okay, yeah, no, I see what you mean, but let me rephrase my question. I want to make it very specific, right? Let's say you're working with a software company that's
Mhm.
based out of Mumbai, and then you're working with a software company that's based out of, say, the US, right? For instance, we are located here in Virginia. Let's say both companies are in the space of building software products. What I'm trying to understand for us, how does your interaction with those companies, do you think, first of all, that there are going to be differences? The reason I asked the question was, I feel like there will be cultural differences, and those cultural differences are going to surface in the interactions that you do end up having. And
Mhm.
in terms of when you're talking about public relations conferences and where you send folks out to,
Mhm.
I'm wondering whether there are differences just because these are two completely different cultures. Or the answer could very well be no, Krish, there's no difference. It's just two software companies.
Mhm.
So there is no real difference. I was just curious to know if there are really any differences there.
No, to answer your question, if thank you for kind of boiling it down for me,
No.
but I don't necessarily think there are differences per se. And the reason I say that is because if you're a software company in India and you're a software company here, your motive and what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, are on a similar line, right? You're not, whatever the agenda of the company is, your goals are on a similar line. So when you say cultural differences, I don't think so. There should be cultural differences because I don't think it has anything to do with, I guess, the culture aspect. It's more about a software company in the US wants XYZ done, a software company in India wants XYZ done. And if you're open to the idea of public relations, you're going to be open to it either way, wherever you belong. So I don't necessarily think there's that much of a difference.
Okay. So, in other words, you're saying, and I'll tell you why I asked this question, right? Say, let's say we have a team of people. A lot of us are here based out of the US, but we do occasionally work with people in different parts of the world from an engineering standpoint. Even though
Mm-hmm.
we are all building software for it, and the fact is you're writing code in the same language, and you might be using the same operating system or the same machine to even write that code in. But based on where that person is actually doing the work from or out of, there are differences that we end up noticing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's not so subtle, which is why, when you're hiring somebody, you're looking for a culture fit as well, right? It's not just the engineering fit, but also a culture fit. I'm just giving you context to why I asked that question in the first place. Because when we notice differences in the team, when you're writing code, I was just wondering whether there'd be more remarkable differences. But based on what you're saying, there aren't that many differences, right? So that's fine.
I
Sorry.
think maybe there might be, if you're talking about differences, I think I would like to classify this as a minute difference. It might be language barriers. But if you're asking me, the reason I don't think so is because I understand the language of India. Like I'm from India, I understand our native languages. So for me, that main barrier of language, that main barrier of understanding is gone. Like I don't have to worry about that. But if you're asking somebody else who's working with an Indian company who does not maybe understand the native language, there will be a difference, right? But if you can blend in, or if you can understand the culture, and if you can blend across the board, I want to say I don't think personally I would feel like, hey, there's a difference, because I
Okay.
understand the differences.
Okay, and let's talk about social media because that's an area that's very overwhelming for a lot of us who are running these companies, because we want to spend our energy in building software, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not good enough, as you know, because how good is it if you build a great product but nobody knew about it, right? So you're going to have to spend a lot of time, money, and effort socializing your product offerings. So
Mm-hmm.
social media is clearly an important piece of the puzzle, even though it's something that a lot of us cannot ever seem to get a hang of, because one day there's one algorithm that picks up one kind of content, another day there's another algorithm, and it's hard for
Mm-hmm.
us to tell the difference between one or the other. So what are some, like, for a software company specifically, again, given our audience is mostly in this space, what are some platforms that you think work better than others? Like, for instance, if you took TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, long form, short form content, video content, audio content, if you could size all of these up and sort of educate us for us to, in your given your experience, given the time you spent in that space, what do you think works, what does not work, and what are some things that you would recommend that we do as companies to constantly keep ourselves up to date with things that are actually changing?
I definitely think LinkedIn works. LinkedIn works in every aspect, right? It depends on just your following, your reach, your account. LinkedIn is meant for this. So I'm a big pro LinkedIn person when it comes to kind of putting content out there. Now, when you say software companies, right? Now I feel like software companies, like you said, do have a template of how they kind of, I guess, brand themselves, position themselves, the content they put out there. Now, considering I am from a public relations background, right? For me, it is, can we make your content fun? Now, it depends if you're open to that. Are you open to like trendy reels? Are you open to like funny reels? Are you open to like anything that is not, I guess, in the sense traditional is the word I'm trying to use? Are you open to that? If you're open to that, then the platform changes, right? Now, you're not going to post a funny reel of yourself on, I guess you could, Instagram and TikTok are better platforms for that, for short, I guess, content. It's better for you people to consume content there and post it there. But if it's a long post, or if it's like, something with pictures, or something where you would, for example, say attended a conference and you tag people, right? LinkedIn is the best for that business kind of outreach and that business connection that you want to form. But we've noticed that I think short form content is now what people like consuming. It's also because I feel like time is valuable, time is of the essence, and people have gotten very protective about their time. So they don't really consume that much long form content, if at all. So if like you're casually like scrolling through things, the short form helps. But like if you're driving, a podcast is a great thing to listen to. It just kind of depends on what you're open to and how you want to kind of brand your company.
Okay, so those are some great examples. Let's dig deeper into some of those because those are challenges that I'll tell
Mhm.
you we are running into as a company, right? So these are not manufactured questions. They are straight from the heart, honest questions to challenges we're having. So you talked about the variety of different kinds of content, right? Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be short? Should it be long form, short form, and so on and so forth?
Mhm.
Let's say even between short form and long form, is there even a straightforward answer for it? Because if you see content on YouTube, there are people posting like 2 hour. I mean, I have like a few creators that I follow. I
Mhm.
have like 10 or 11 subscriptions. That's pretty much it on YouTube. Some of them have started posting content that is 2 hours long. They used to be doing 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Now they've gone to the other extreme to say, you know what, I sometimes don't buy a movie on Apple, like Apple
Mhm.
TV. I rather spend the 2 hours just watching this, and I give them the thank you, pay them $10 and $5 occasionally here and there. And then there's on the other side, you have I don't know, hundreds of thousands of reels and YouTube shorts coming up on a daily basis. And
Mhm.
I've Googled this. I've tried to look through Claude and ChatGPT and I did a lot of the due diligence. There does not seem to be a straightforward answer. So my question to you is really twofold. Does one work versus, I mean, can we ever say that this works better for these types of companies versus another? Or is it almost always going to be, we cannot really be sure. So we're going to have to create all kinds of content in all forms, shapes, and sizes and publish it in every possible distribution platform that we have to.
I am more aligned with you on your second take on it, but then I also want to mention that you need to kind of, I guess, understand and study your target audience, right? Now, for instance, if I'm talking to a college student, right? A college student has, like, at least when I went to college, everybody was like reels and TikToks and all of that. But that's that audience, right? There's, like you said, there's no clear answer. You create all forms of content. As a company, too, we don't just like, we don't like, if our client has a podcast, we're not like, okay, we're just going to make a short clip out of it. No, because we want all forms of content. Options are key, right? Options of how, where, what content is consumed is key. So if we have someone at who's doing a podcast, we'll make sure the YouTube is out, we'll make sure the shorts are out, we'll make sure the LinkedIn post goes on, because you have different audiences on each of these platforms. And if you want someone to see it, to consume it, to just know that it exists, you need to have that bunch of content. So to answer your question, yes, you can't really ever know. You just have to do everything, I guess, if you are capable of doing everything and if you want to do everything.
I was hoping you'll pick the first, but I knew you're going to pick the second because I've seen that that is what happens to be the case all the time. So
I
here
would
is
love
a
sorry, I would love to be in a place where I could pick the first, but I feel like the reality is it is everything. It is a bunch of and a mix of everything.
So now I have a more difficult question, I think, for you. At least a difficult question from my perspective. As a company, it's quite overwhelming for us to one create content because this is time we could be spending, or we think sometimes we should spend in creating our products or improving them, but that's not possible, right? So we're going to have to create content. So we do a number of different things, right? We blog, we do podcasts, and yada yada yada. But the problem is,
Mhm.
even though we need to create all forms of content for a it takes a ton of time. I mean, one might think, things have improved so much that I can create a 3-minute video and then by
Mhm.
click of a button, I have it propagated to like 17 different platforms. For
Mhm.
whatever weird reason, that's still not possible, right? I've tried so many different tools.
Mhm.
They each of them want you to engage with that particular their own platforms. So they don't make it convenient for you to sit outside the platform and distribute to 25 different platforms, right? They want you to go get on Reels, waste a bunch of time watching other reels before you publish the two pieces of video that you actually want to be able to do. The same thing goes for TikTok, the same thing for YouTube shorts, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
is this a problem that you hear other clients tell you, or is it just a Krish being creative about coming up with this as a problem? And the second part of the question is, if it is a genuine problem, what are some recommendations that you tell your clients so they can get past this phase of being overwhelmed, essentially?
I sorry, can you say the question to me again?
So, two
Sorry.
questions. The first question is, it is not easy for every company to spend a
Mhm.
ton of time creating the same
Right.
content or different content and publishing in 20 different platforms. If that's the way to go, is that a problem that you see other clients of yours have as well? I was just curious to know if it's something we are running into, but it's not a common problem.
So, yes, it is time consuming, especially because my first answer to the previous question was that it is, you have to do everything. That was my answer to it, because the reality is you do have to do everything, which is kind of why I guess firms like us step in. Like, this is not like a sales or a, like, whatever pitch, but this is where we come in. We try to maximize the time that entrepreneurs have and that companies have, because you're right, I don't think a CEO has the time to sit and make reels and to like do so much, because there's only so much they can do, especially if they want to be involved in that. So to answer your question, are you willing to invest? And when I say invest, I don't just mean like monetary investment. Are you willing to invest in talent? Are you willing to invest in people? Or are you willing to invest in the ability that people have to be able to make your life easy? So the reason our clients come to us is because it is a problem they're facing. They don't have the time to sit and do that. And if you want to be everywhere, you have to have the skill sets of multiple people, I guess, or multiple ways to put your content out there. So you need someone to narrow it down. And I guess that's why I work in a public relations and marketing firm, because I get the opportunity to see so much content, consume so much content, and know that there's talent to put it together for our clients. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And then, do you, like, personally, do you see the need for, I was reading something the other day where it said, even if you're not doing it to enrich your professional skills or sell yourself professionally, we are living in a day and age where a lot of us have to create content to even publish the fact that we do exist as humans, correct? So do
Right?
you, given the fact that we look like we are 100 years apart, right, by demographic, I'm going to ask you this as somebody from your generation. What are do you or your friends or your coworkers, do you see people in your demographic create content? Like, what kind of if so, what kind of content do they create? Or do you see people, like, for instance, I create content, sometimes I like it, other times I have to, but you couldn't pay my wife to show up in front of a camera, right? She would never do that. So I'm just trying to understand the changing needs of society, So if you could just speak a little bit to that, right?
Mhm.
Both personally and professionally, right? What does content creation mean to you?
The perfect example for this, and it would be actually my CEO. So, before you're a CEO, before you're an employee, you're a human, right? You're a person. What does a person do? What do you like doing? Do you like going to watch a movie? Do you like playing pickleball? Do you like watching sports? Right? And you're not the only person who likes maybe playing pickleball or watching a sport, right? There may be so many people who like that and who want to kind of feel human too. So, personally, for content, I guess to answer your question, you have to come off human and you have to just be you. Like my CEO, like she loves to go to the gym. She'll post content of her going to the gym because there are other people who, I guess, go to the gym or want to feel motivated to go to the gym. Maybe they see her and get motivated. So, from a personal standpoint, you just have to be yourself. The more you pretend to be someone you're not, you're going to get burnt out of pretending, and there's going to be a time you're going to come crashing down, right? Just be yourself. Just do what you like doing. Post what you like doing. There may be things that don't need to be content. Like if you're feeling sad or if you're grieving or there's something happening, that does not need to be content. But there are things or people or opportunities or experiences that make you happy. So that can be content and that can be your personal content. From a professional standpoint, people might get tired. I don't want to use that word tired, but when too much of business or professional content is out there, people forget, or they are made to forget that you're human too, which is why the personal content is so important too. Now, for example, if I keep posting like only about professional, I'm talking about TikTok and Instagram, not LinkedIn. Not LinkedIn, but TikTok and Instagram and these places. If I just keep posting professional, there will be a point where people are like, but does she do anything for fun? Does she do anything for herself? Does she do anything to make her happy? And when they see content that maybe is what makes me happy, they're like, oh, she's human, she's relatable, good to see. Like, I want to consume her content more because I've given them a reason to want to consume my content. Right? Makes sense?
No. I think you said it beautifully. Let's get into the details of again content and very specific questions. Given the problems we've always had as a
Mhm.
company or continue to have, let's say we are an engineering software company, so we started say creating this podcast, right, where we did a lot of software development work.
Right.
But then when we expanded that to talk to people not outside coding, to other facets of engineering, right? Like, every role is just as important in a software company, right? You just can't, a lot of us developers used to think, at least incorrectly so, that we somehow are doing the most important thing in a software company. I used to not think that way at all, but I think even lesser of what I do now, I'll be honest with you, given everything else is so much more challenging, right? To me, writing code is the easiest, even without AI or Claude and whatnot. Every other role is a lot more subjective and becomes a lot more complex. So
Right.
from that as context, when we go create content, we tend to create content about things that we are generally comfortable doing, right? What we've been doing in our careers and whatnot. But that doesn't necessarily make for entertaining content. For instance, if you go to YouTube, how many times do people look to see how do I write code in Python, right? Sure, there are some videos out there, but there's a lot more videos of people traveling, making, having recipes and food, and there's no dearth of people picking up the camera and going to India and creating content, right? Even having food on the streets. I mean, I grew up in Chennai, but I've not eaten a lot of the food that I see that shows up on my feed that gets a million views or 5 million views, right? And here you're trying to create technical content. It takes you like several hours to put that together. Your traction is nowhere near that. So
Mhm.
what do you, from your experience, what do you tell people? Are we expected to create content well outside our comfort zones in spaces that don't relate to our business in
Mhm.
the interest of finding traction? So people know we exist and then they find our products and company and whatnot. Or would you recommend that we stick to what we do in a
Mhm.
company and create content around the core business of the company, because they are two extremely different approaches? I just want to get your thoughts on either of those approaches.
So this boils down to one and only one fundamental question. Are you open to different types of content? Are you open to be uncomfortable? Is the question you ask yourself. Now, to you, if coding is comfortable, you're not never going to hesitate or never going to think twice to put out something that's coding related. But now, if I ask you, hey, do you want to run across the street and be funny and make a funny content, you're going to think twice. But the question is, are you open to doing that? Is that something you would, I guess, want to do? And if it is, then I feel like there is never, you can always expand on that, because the more you kind of, I guess, get uncomfortable in your own space, you're creating room for more people to consume content, right? You're opening the audience to a bigger audience that's just not just coders, it's more people. Now, to also to address what you said, like there are people who make travel videos and who make all of that get 5 million views. You also have to try to figure out, why does that get 5 million views, right? It's probably because that's more people want to consume more content that seems relatable, that seems human, that seems aspirational. Like maybe people watch that content because they want to be traveling like that someday. So to simplify it for you in like the smallest way possible, if you are open to being uncomfortable and if that's a challenge you take for yourself, please do it. Because we've done that with our clients. Like we've had multiple clients where they come to us and they're like, do you really want us to drop a paintbrush on someone's head? Like, not like we literally do that, but
Right.
like it's a funny trendy reel, right? And I'm like, and we're like, yeah, we need you to. And that content has blown up. Like we've done it for our clients and it's blown up, and that's only because maybe they accepted being uncomfortable. So in simple words, Krish, it just boils down to, are you okay and want to be uncomfortable in your space? And if sometimes uncomfortable isn't bad, sometimes uncomfortable is interesting, and you just have to figure out if you want to do that.
It's a great answer. I'm going to probably talk to you after the podcast as well, because there's plenty of space areas that we could use help. And based on
Mm-hmm.
everything you're telling me here, Farah, I think it's certainly worth for us to have that conversation. So
For sure.
appreciate your thoughts here. So we have about 12, 15 minutes to go. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask me any questions as well. So feel free to ask me anything that you want to ask me. The last few questions that I have for you, right? Let's talk again. Again, I've only had one other person who showed up on my podcast who was from Mumbai, and I had
Mm-hmm.
a wonderful conversation with her, Nikki Barwa, if I remember the last name correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was from Mumbai. I need to make sure I'm correct there. So, given that you grew up and you're born and raised in a city that is almost unlike any other, right? I mean, there are some we can draw some parallels to, maybe New York, maybe Tokyo, just in terms of the volume of people. But not everybody's, I grew up in Chennai, south of India, right? When I grew up, there was still a fair number of people, but nowhere near the population of Mumbai, for
Mm-hmm.
instance. So I want to just talk a little bit about Bombay, at least as a lot of us know of it, as uh, it is very different, right? For people who have not been there,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like 23 million people in a city, right? There's very few cities in the world that have over 20 million people.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to have your formative years in a city that's so busy with people bustling and people working hard and people
Mm-hmm.
going about their things? And what are some takeaways and things that you've learned by virtue of growing up in a city like that, which you feel like you would have actually not been able to gain if you had grown up in perhaps any other city, even say in India?
This is my favorite question in the world, because Bombay
Thank
is
you.
my favorite city in the world, and nothing and nobody can ever change that for me. I grew up in, not stereotyping, but I feel like the West depiction of India is very different than people who actually live in India and grow up. I'm not saying that the West like makes it seem like bad or anything, but if you're a local from Bombay, there's so much to it that maybe media will not be able to show you. Like I grew up in noise. I grew up with street food. I grew up with, like, I never made my bed for a single day when I was in India, because you had help to do it for you. If I needed to go anywhere, I wouldn't have to like take 10 subways and go anywhere. I just had to call a rickshaw, which is like the three-wheeler. I just have to call a rickshaw and I'm where I need to be. And I grew up with food is like my favorite thing on this planet. If anybody knows me, they know that the way to my heart is food. So I grew up with the local Mumbai food, like the vada paos and the misal paos, and like the amazing food that I still to this very second that I
No,
live in the US.
I'm gonna interrupt you for a second. Sorry, only because I had a guest on the podcast. Like I want to say maybe a couple of weeks ago, a fantastic guy who runs a company in London. His
Mhm.
name is Sai, right? Sai Danak, and I think I want to give a shout out. I think the name of his company is Deduction, if I'm not wrong. When I ask people, which I'll ask you at the end of the podcast, what their favorite food is. That's what he told me. I remember vividly. Yeah, I was thinking he's going to say something else from like London. He was born and raised in London. He said, Krish, if you haven't tried it, I think he said vada pav. So sorry, when you
Uh,
said vada pav, I think that just rung a bell. Keep going. Yeah.
yeah, I grew up eating the vada paos, the pani puris, and all this food you get back in Bombay. And most importantly, for me, this is a very personal me answer. For me, Bombay is home to me. And Bombay is home because my family is back home. I don't think I could live in any other city in India except Bombay. And that's only because I got everything that I know.
I thought the best city was Chennai, no? Just kidding.
But I feel like I got everything I did and I learned everything I did in Bombay. So my cognitive thinking and my cognitive brain is accustomed to Bombay is the best because every good thing that happened in my life happened in Bombay while I was in Bombay. So to answer your question, Krish, it is the best city. Nobody can ever change that. For me, at least. You can
So
take your.
let me make it more specific, right? The question, but thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
You're in the space of public relations, right? Did growing up in Bombay, was that one of the reasons that encouraged you or motivated you to pick this as a career, or does it have little to do with the city in itself?
No, it has nothing to do with me being from Mumbai. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. I used to work a sales job for a while, and I realized I'm a very creative person. And the reason I became a creative person is because back in Bombay, I'd go for art classes every single day. I did Bharatnatyam for a very long time. I played the piano. A lot of creativity in my life happened because I was encouraged as a child to be a part of those. Now, again, not saying that the US doesn't do that. It's just this is where culture comes in. For me, Bharatnatyam and all these local Indian cultural things happened because I was back home. So when I came here, I did a sales job for a bit and I realized that it doesn't let me be creative. No offense to anybody in sales, like you guys are doing amazing, but it wasn't for me and that's okay. Sometimes things are not for you and I realized that I need something that lets me be creative. And public relations lets me be creative. It allows me to be creative. It allows me to be able to be creative not just as a person but also be creative with our clients. Like we've built brands for our clients, we've built our clients, and it's all happened because creativity exists, and it only exists because Bombay happened to me. So to answer your question, my career happened because I was missing being creative.
Okay, that is nice to know. Last couple of questions. You mentioned vada pav, so you can't use that as the answer. This is something I ask of all my guests.
Mhm.
What is your ideal dinner? Like it doesn't have to be the same cuisine, but
Mhm.
what would appetizer be? What would entree be? And what would
Mhm.
dessert be? It could be the same cuisine, all three, or it does not have to be, but what would each of those dishes actually be?
So this is the toughest question you've asked me this whole podcast.
Thank you.
How much I love food is very hard to answer. But I think I love Indo-Chinese. It is my favorite cuisine on this planet. For people who don't know Indo-Chinese, it is not the Chinese you think it is. It is spicy, blow your head off Szechuan sauce Chinese that is very Indianized to cater to the Indian palate. So for starter, I would pick like chili chicken, not the basic chili chicken, the Indo-Chinese chili chicken or like tandoori chicken any day. For my main course, it would be either like Szechuan fried rice or like Szechuan noodles. If it is Indo-Chinese, if it's not, then it'll be butter chicken with rumali roti, the best. And then dessert would probably just be I have the biggest sweet tooth for motichur laddu, which is what you get when you eat during like Ganesh Chaturthi, during Ganpati, or just anything sweet. I have the biggest sweet tooth. Every desi person has a very big sweet tooth. So honestly, I can eat anything in sweet. There's no answer to that.
You got me hungry already. Everything sounds pretty cool over there, and I can only imagine how good everything must be actually in India. As somebody who moved here when I was pretty young,
Mm-hmm.
I tell people if you want to have the best Indian food, you've got to be in
Mm-hmm.
India, obviously. But
Yeah.
if you can't go that far, there's two other places that I generally recommend. I don't know, have you been to Singapore, Farah?
Yes, I have.
So they have fantastic South Indian food, right? I mean, I can't find it even, it's almost as good as Chennai, for instance. And then you said you're from London. When I was there a few times, I recognized that Indian food in England, in UK, is a lot closer to food I think I had eaten back in India. Uh,
It is.
the US is completely far out, right? This is not Indian food really, but it's all right. At least it's normalized. A lot of people can appreciate it, right? So
Right.
thanks for sharing that dinner with us. Now, here's an opportunity for you. I asked you a number of questions and you
Mm-hmm.
patiently answered them. So much appreciated. I learned a bunch by having this conversation with you. Now is
Mm-hmm.
your time to ask me whatever you want to ask me.
So tell me, why did you pick the US? Why did you come here?
Wow. You told me I asked you a very difficult question.
Mhm.
You've asked me a question that's actually very easy and very difficult at the same time. Because, I've
Okay.
actually answered this question without people asking me on the
Uh-huh.
podcast more than once, right? So you know that I cannot make this up. So my answer has to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
When I was like 20 or I don't know, maybe 16 or 17, I don't know, when I was just before I went to college, I grew up in the south of India, right, in Chennai. But I went to college in the north, but all of my formative years were in Chennai. India is a lovely country, right? A beautiful country, but it's not for everybody. Right? So when I was 16 or 17, I knew this was a great land,
Mm-hmm.
lovely people, great food, but I felt the disconnect. I don't know. I had not been anywhere else. I was 16. I'd never traveled to any other country, but it was not for me. So my wife actually is Indian from Malaysia. I've been to Malaysia a few times. It's a beautiful country as well. So that's one place I could have gone to even before I got married. Wonderful country, but again, not for me, right? I didn't feel like I could settle down there.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up watching English movies, like Hollywood movies, all my life. And I took a liking to Western classical when I was like 12 or 13. I mean, in Chennai, Carnatic music is the most popular, right? It's more complicated as well, or equally complicated. But for whatever reason, I liked it. And I thought to myself, you know what, if I ever get out of India, I would only go to the US, right? No other country, right? And it's funny when people ask me if I go back like 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
I would not do anything differently. I'm not going to go to Australia. UK is beautiful. I don't see myself living there. The only other country I would still find myself living is America, right? I love this country and I moved here. I mean, it's not perfect. No country is perfect, my wife and I grew up in different parts of the world, but the only place where we find it as home is actually here, right? It's kind of, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
only place. We go to Malaysia. She's home for the most part, and I'm lost. We go to India. She's like fish out of water, and I've become more and more fish out of water the more number of years I've lived out of there.
Uh-huh.
So, and there's a couple of other reasons, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
if you said creativity, I don't know seriously if there's any better place to live to
Mm-hmm.
exhibit your creativity to the fullest extent than the US of A, right? At least that's my opinion. I grew up, doing a lot of management courses back in India, and a lot of the textbooks and the authors were American authors, right? And I remember one of those lines from when I was 15 years of age, and I still remember that vividly for what it's
Mm-hmm.
worth. It said, in a lot of the in many parts of the world, you identify a problem,
Right.
you make a product or a service to cater to that problem, and that becomes a business. America is different, where you create the problem that did not exist in the first place, and you make people truly believe that that problem needs to be solved with those solutions and products that they offer. Apple's a
Mm-hmm.
classic example, right? You end up buying stuff like they sold, what is it, a towel or something to wipe your phone for like $35, some bizarre stuff like that. And they actually sold out of that, right? I mean, that's an incredible, I don't know how else to explain that, right? It's just,
It's all marketing. It's all
yeah, right. And you are in that space, right? You are very much in that space. So that would be my answer. And plus, every single thing that's happened in our lives outside of graduation for
Mhm.
my wife and I, and we have one son, is here, right? We bought our first inch of land here, I wrote my first line of code that somebody paid me here. I incorporated my company here. I bought my first car here. So I grew up in India when I was like 20. I think I came here.
Mm-hmm.
So I love India because that's where I was born and raised. My family is there.
Mm-hmm.
But this is home. This is
Yeah.
home. Even if I have the Indian accent, this is home. Even if I
Mm-hmm.
don't find as much vegetarian food as I would find in India, this is home. But
Mm-hmm.
despite everything else that's different, this is home. So hopefully that answered that question. Anything else you want to ask me as well? Please go for it.
No, I really wanted to know that because when I feel like everybody who comes to the US comes with a different intention or a different motive.
Oh, you said
And
it beautifully. You know what? It's
yeah,
so funny you should say that because I tell this to every single person. I didn't want to interrupt you there, but you literally said something that I've said 100 times, so I could not get stop being elated. Sorry, keep going there. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
I've really noticed like there are people who come to for education. There are people who come because maybe they feel stuck back in India. Maybe they want freedom. So I feel like everybody comes for a different reason, but not everybody is able to make the US home. And that's, I mean, there are multiple reasons for that, and there are maybe a lot of people in that boat. So I feel like anybody who's ever watching this, like, home is where you make it home. So I'm glad you were able to make the US home and that you were able to find home here. And I feel like maybe those who can't find home, it's okay to also want to go back. So that's kind of why I was curious. I was like, do you
Yeah,
feel
you know,
like the US has treated you as home? Like, do you feel like that this is where you belong,
yeah,
So
the thing I'll tell you, I'll also complete that saying, what are some things I miss, right? That I
Mhm.
sorely miss.
Mhm.
Um, I don't have my family is back in India, right? My wife's family is in like Singapore and Malaysia.
Right.
So let's say my sister bought a pressure cooker from a Target in India, for instance, right? It's not a
Mhm.
big thing. Let's say it's $50 a pressure cooker, right? But to be able to socialize with your family when they bought something new that's as silly as that is
Yeah.
priceless. It's one thing to go. I'm going to India in summer for a wedding. My niece is getting married. That's you would go to these big occasions, right? But life is not only about big occasions, right? Life is about the little things. The
Mhm.
thing I miss is given that all my family is back in India, I cannot go there when they buy a pressure cooker, right? I can only go there when they actually have a wedding. That's something it's priceless, right? So there is a cost to immigration. I'm going to share this with you at a personal and a level so people can probably
Mhm.
relate to some of this.
Mhm.
People don't understand there's a cost to immigration. It's not a bed of roses, no. You've got to make a bunch of sacrifices in the quest for something else that you believe is something you're going to cherish or it's important to you, whatever that is to you.
Mhm.
Things that I miss Diwali, or we call Deepavali back in South India, right? So I miss that sorely because I take the day off here, or I don't do any work on that day, but that's not the same. Seeing
It's not.
everybody on the street celebrating it is entirely different from just a cohort
Mhm.
of people doing it. I
Mhm.
miss my favorite festival, which is Pongal, right? Which is in the month of January, right? Just went by, right? It's a very important festival in Tamil Nadu and other parts of India as well, right? They call it different, like
Mhm.
Lohari, and I don't know, there's like different words, like different people. Like in Maharashtra, I think they call it Lohari, right? If I'm not wrong.
Lori.
Lori, okay, sorry, yep. So, that's a festival I miss. Vacations, birthday, family, and people I grew up with. So that's
Mhm.
a void in my life. I mean, I won't deny that. And then
Yeah.
last but not least, I love cricket, like test cricket. So I've not taken a liking to any other sport. I play like other sports like table tennis and tennis, but cricket is the only thing I've watched. I grew up watching. So now I
Mhm.
pay quite a bit of money to watch cricket that's played in like England and Australia and everywhere else.
Your
So there
favorite
is a
player?
cost. Sorry.
Sorry, who's your favorite player?
Well, I'm older, as you can tell, but I've watched. I don't know if you probably are too young to know. Does Brian Lara ring a bell? Brian
Oh
Lara?
yeah, of course I
Yeah.
know
Okay.
Brian.
Yeah. So I watched him a few times when he was in India, for instance. Right. My all-time favorite batsman is like Brian Lara, and Wasim
Mhm.
Akram, my favorite bowler. I think. Right. These are people I would love to watch any day, all day long. So those are things that you miss, and that won't change. That's never going to
Mhm.
change. Right. So there is
Right.
a cost to immigration.
Mhm.
So it's funny, we never talked about it. The last person was from Bombay, I think Nikki again. We had a half-hour conversation about immigration, literally, right? The podcast was not about immigration, but I asked Nikki, and she's sure, Krish, I have an opinion or two, and she's articulated it beautifully.
Mhm.
I think, I don't know, you didn't ask me, but Immigration is an important topic, right? We live in a time and age where
Right.
it's very polarizing. It's very polarizing, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
think most people recognize that there's good in it, as long as there are certain requirements that it meets. There is a lot of good in it, right? So it's important to recognize that. As an immigrant, I'll say that I wanted to come here and I'm here, but there are things I miss, and that void is going to be, you're going to have to take that void to the grave. So if anyone's
Right.
going to migrate to another country thinking that they're going to make no sacrifices,
Mm-hmm.
either they're ignorant or they're lying to themselves, right? Nothing else could be the truth there.
Also, like, everybody's cost of immigration is different. Like, for
Very
some it might be just monetary, for some it might be the emotional disconnect, for some it might be food. Like, for me, like I love birthdays, it's my favorite thing, and I didn't and my father is my favorite person thing. Like, my existence is for that man, and I haven't celebrated my birthday with him in 6 years, which is a very big deal. And that is my cost of immigration, the fact that he's so far from me. My sister is so far from me. And I grew up in a family where we lived, and every single breath was for your family. So for me, the biggest cost of immigration is the fact that home, when it comes to family, is so far. Right? Like you said, I can't go back home when my dad buys a pair of glasses. Like, I can't do that. But you have to weigh out the odds. Like, is it worth it? I keep asking myself, is it worth it?
So
Is
I'm
it
going to
worth it?
ask you the question that you asked me back to you, right? You grew up in a city of 22 million people, give or take.
Mhm.
I've been to Tampa a few times. I don't know what the population is, but I'd be surprised if
Mhm.
it's more than 500,000, somewhere around there, right? Probably not even that much, right? So it's very different, right? Because I've been to St. Petersburg, Clearwater, and Tampa. I'm fairly familiar with that area. What what motivates you? Why what you're doing sitting
Mhm.
where you're sitting right now? What are some things that keeps you here?
So, like I said, I ask myself every day, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And till now, my answer has been yes. And the only reason it's been yes, because I work very hard. I work around the clock. You've probably seen emails from me like at like odd
Right.
hours, and I work very hard. And I work hard so that I can climb the ladder of my own success. Right now, to me, I have to validate the fact that the cost of immigration that I am paying is worth it. And the only way I can make it worth it for me is if I'm professionally progressing in life, or if I'm progressing as an individual and growing as an individual. The day that stops, it's not worth it to me. And then it is what it is. It's the end. I might just go back. But because I'm motivated as a person, because I want to, I guess, be the best version of myself at all times, the answer is yes. And it will be yes till I keep growing, keep learning, keep doing what I have to do. Because you have to, I guess, justify where you are. And for me, that is the fact that maybe I'm growing. And that's
Amazing. I have one last question for you, right? And you don't have to answer this question, right? Feel
Mm-hmm.
free to not have to answer it. I just ask because every time somebody is on the podcast, they bring something very unique to the table, right? Both in terms of skill sets and experience and background, the richness of the people who show up. I couldn't be more grateful to everybody, right? So, again, thank you so much for taking time. So, this question is very specific based on the little I know of you, based on what you've shared during the last 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
Again, feel free to not have to answer this question, right? It's based on some stereotypes and some experiences, right? So my
Mm-hmm.
mom is a very dynamic person who lives in India. She's very smart, but she didn't have, I mean, she's smart, and but she never worked, like, she didn't have a job outside of the house. She wanted to start a business. She tried some, but she didn't get the support that she needed.
Right.
So one of the conversations I have with my mom all the time
Mm-hmm.
is, what are some things that she thinks she could have done if she were not a lady and was a man and was born
Right.
at the exact same day and age back in India?
Right.
And the other question I asked my mom is, loosely speaking, right? She doesn't know all the answers, but if she were to have been born today or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, as opposed to being born 70 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
what does she think she would have done differently, right? Because that's very important to me, because some things I can only speculate, but you've got to hear it from the horse's mouth. I'm
Right.
asking somebody else who's also from India, but happens to be kind of the other end of the spectrum from a demographic standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to answer the question, what would your answers be to these questions?
What would I have done differently?
No, the question being more specifically, Sorry, let me rephrase it, right? So that's the context, and here's the question. Either you or people you know, do you see, because of the fact that their person is a woman, right, who's in India, that they are not able to do things that they would have otherwise been able to do? Are
Mhm.
there societal expectations and constraints that you see people are having to fight through that stops them from, one, realizing their dreams or even working towards their dreams?
Right. So to answer this question, I feel like, again, this is again very personal to me. I grew up in a house where I was given freedom of thought. I was given freedom of being able to make a choice. Now, I'm not saying every choice was good. I've had my fair share of bad choices, but I was given that freedom. And the reason I was given that freedom is because I always expressed that I wanted that freedom and I fought for that freedom. I didn't have to really, really fight through it, but I had to like make it evident that I wanted that freedom to make a choice. I know back at home, at least maybe not Gen Z. I feel like Gen Z and Gen Alpha are like rebelling across life and they have their rebel movement going on in their own lives. And it's easier now for them to make these choices. Like I know so many in the Gen Alpha age group. Like for them coming to the US is not a fight. For them coming to the US is just you do you. Like if you want to go, you go. Can you afford it? Yes, if you can, go. I feel like the older, like the millennials, I guess, and maybe older than that, they've had to fight through that. But now I genuinely think things have changed. Like, I think that people have, like I said, the freedom of choice. People are now very independent of decisions. Before it was, no, what would your dad say? No, what would your mom say? Now it's more like, no, like the respect for, I guess, the generation and the children or the kids has gotten more. I mean, I'm not, the US has it very sorted, like the way kids are treated and the way that bond between parents are. In India, it's still a little bit more emotional, I guess is the word I want to use, where family input matters a lot. But in defense to everything and to summarize it, it has changed. And I have seen the change because I've seen kids younger than kids kind of, see the difference and like, make those choices. So yeah, I feel like it has become better. It could be better, but for now it's in a good place. It's moving in the right direction.
Okay, that's very good to know. That's all I have. Anything else you want to ask me before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. A lot of questions that I have analyzed while I have not analyzed may not be the right word. A lot of questions that got me into a thinking mode. So thank you for making me think in directions that I want to think in. And yeah, definitely we should connect after the podcast too. We would love as a company to help the software world to understand how important personal branding is, because it is. And I don't say that because I'm in this field. I say that because it is important.
Okay, very much so. Thank you so much for just stay on the call, once we're done here. Again, folks, by way of introduction, it was my pleasure to talk to Farah Farid Kazani. She's the director of PR at Rosarium Collective. We'll include the links to the company and to Farah's LinkedIn profile. So certainly, just reach out to her and her organization when you have a need. With that said, I'm going to call it wraps here. Thanks a lot for watching.
Thank you.